Isn't it a beautiful place? Yes, it is. We're happy here. We want to thank our sponsors who are in the room tonight from Tropical Shipping, Jennifer Nugent, from Community Foundation, Darrell Houston, from Riviera Beach CDC, Darrell Leonard, and the City of Riviera Beach, myself, Chair Chili Hotel, and Chair Pro Tem Douglas Lawson, City Manager and CRA Director Jonathan Evans. We also want to thank Wells Fargo. I now invite you to participate in a conversation, to partake in a conversation with our hosts, Dr. Catherine Lowe and Barbara Cheese. Have a good evening.
So, Dr. Lowe, this is awesome. I love this. This exhibit is terrific. So let's start out with artist showcase of the Palm Beaches. Tell us about it.
Well, Artist Showcase of the Palm Beaches is a hidden gem, I think, in the Palm Beach area. We've been around for close to 30 years. We have attempted to provide educational programs for children, especially a lot of after-school programs, to really tap into their creative side and not try to make them a great famous Picasso or Jacob Lawrence, but to get them to tap into their creative abilities, because it helps them out with critical thinking, with math, with all those kinds of things. And we found that it's so important. The other thing that we do is we like to promote artists of color. So often, especially when I first came back, there was just no venues, with so many great, talented African-American artists to display their artwork. So I said, we really need to do something about that. And I'm beginning to see that all of the mainstream organizations are now opening their doors and seeing what greatness they have missed by not including so many artists of color in their exhibits and in their galleries.
Where does the artist showcase live?
Right now, we don't have a home. We are truly in need of a home. We have been for many years in there on Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. We were the city of West Palm Beach had the house, and they wanted Sickle Cell Palm Beaches to be in the house with us. So we thought we would try that, but everybody started getting nervous. So we don't know what's going to happen with the artwork if we have too many volunteers coming through. So we just said it was probably best that we let them have the house. So we are truly in need of a house.
Everybody hear that out there? So let's talk about this for a bit. This exhibit is called Civil Rights Reflected in Art. Why is art so important to Black history in the United States?
You know, when I think about that, it takes me all the way back to Dr. Adolphus Lee, who was at Howard University. He came down to West Palm Beach in the late 80s, early 90s, and he brought the Barnett Aiden collection down to Boca Raton, Florida. And for some reason or other, I went down there and I was talking to him and I said, Dr. Ely, this artwork is just fantastic. And several years later, the artwork sold. The Florida Endowment bought it, and I think it sold for like $4.1 million. And I think it was on the cover of New Yorker or the Wall Street Journal saying, this is the most that Black art has ever sold for in the entire world. And when I talked to Dr. Ely, he would always say that so much of our culture, our history is wrapped up in our art, because so often that is the way the artist expressed whatever was going on with them. Joy, sorrow, pain, all of those kinds of things. Pretty much it tells a lot of stories about what the African-American experience has been.
So I've had the opportunity to see some of the art already. I know it's an upcoming segment, folks will get to see the pieces. But tell us about the history line out there, the timeline. As I looked through there, I thought I saw some slavery pieces, and I saw something about sale of Negroes, did I not?
Yes, you did. I believe that's Thomas O'Bannon. And it's interesting the way he's kind of silhouetted it to see the Negroes for sale. And then on the cover, then he has a picture of a Buffalo soldier. So it really kind of shows it's a lot of times through adversity and through pain. So great things can still come out of that. So the great things that the Buffalo soldiers were doing out west, I think that's very, very, very important to see that through struggle, through pain, still there can be growth in some positive things that can come from.
Speaking of which, and I love the way you put a positive spin on the pain with the piece outside. But there's a piece that is very painful to me. I've always heard of the back-breaking work of our slaves. And I saw a piece of a woman picking cotton, like she had a child on her back.
Yes, you did. You were talking about that and saying, how I've heard about, what did you say?
Back-breaking pain.
Back-breaking pain. Truly, I know. My mother grew up on a farm in Georgia, which a little unusual, I would say, that my grandparents owned. And she said when she was a young girl, she did not want to pick cotton. You know, if you ever have done it, and I don't know if you have, and it truly is backbreaking. And the thorns and the thistles that are there, it really, it pierces your hands. So by the end of the day, your hands are bloody, usually they are. And to see that woman there, the way they captured her, the artist has captured, I think it's Gilbert, and showing that she has a child, she has a child on her back. And there she is with all of the love and the caring and the concern of the child, having her there with her, as well as being able to do labor so that there would be food provided for the family.
I love that. You also had some pieces out there of young people. I know that, we believe that children are our future.
Yes, they are.
And I talked earlier with you about not giving children the opportunity to express their art. So there's a piece out there of two young men at a table, maybe learning to draw.
That's right. That piece is by Brenda Joy Smith. It's called Creativity. And Brenda Joy Smith is a wonderful artist. I met her a long time ago at the Black Arts Festival up in Atlanta. And she talked about that piece, and she basically said, and I've also talked to psychologists who basically say by the time a child, no matter what hue, is in the 4th or the 5th grade, a lot of their creativity has been stifled. You know, it's important that children learn structure and conforming, but also something a little bit is lost and taken away when there's not a time period where children are able to freely express themselves. And they do it so well with drawing, with painting, with coloring, with collages and those kinds of things. So I think it's very, very important that in our school system, we not cut out music and art. And we continue to work on the creativity. This country is supposedly, we're the greatest innovators in the world. Is that not right?
Yes.
America? So if that's the case, we should not be stifling the creativity of our children.
It also struck me that the artists in this picture were little boys. Because when I was in school, they were teaching the girls art. And the boys were doing something in the shop. So
That's
one of
true.
my favorite male artists, Anthony Burks, is in the room. So how many did she achieve little boys?
I think it's important because, and I think the athletes, I think express it the best. Because they say, I thought that was sissy and that was girls' things, but they wanted me to take ballet lessons and they wanted me to learn balance. And it's important also for math. When you learn shapes and volumes and sizes and ratios and those kinds of things, all of that really comes from creativity. It comes from art. So when people start talking about STEAM, I keep saying, you gotta put that A in there and it gets it. It's so important because the arts is where it's at. We have to put the arts in all of the things that we're doing to educate our children.
And you just said athlete. So a piece out there really struck a chord with me. And it's an Olympiad.
Yes, it is. That piece is by an artist, Joel Gresham. He's from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He now lives up in Atlanta. But he, Edwin Moses, who won 122 hurdle races consecutively. No one beat him for 122 races. That's Edwin Moses. The original of that piece was set in my office for years, and I finally had to tell Joel Gresham, Joel, we can't afford the insurance on this piece. And the piece is very cute. And the piece finally went to the Olympics office. That's where the original piece of that, we have a lithograph out there of it. But that's Joel Gresham, and Joel Gresham was very important. We brought him here. He was here in West Palm Beach, and he lined up chairs, and he jumped across several of the chairs. So the children were just so impressed. But we brought him here again to talk about academics and education. And because Joel Gresham was at Morehouse, he was a physics major. Both of his parents were in education. And we talked about, yes, being creative, being artistic, playing sports, but also getting a solid foundation in education. That was our whole point, was the education was what was important.
So I don't know a Morehouse man that's not proud of his school, so I think he has a burden over Morehouse. And so you gave me a connection between the two of them, they were there together.
Yes, they were.
I think that's wonderful. So in this Black History Month, as we celebrate festive things like Edwin Moses, there's a lot of pain that goes along with Black History Month. And one of the pieces out there is the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Yes.
And if anybody wasn't paying attention to it, when John Lewis died last year, it was featured prominently everywhere. So talk a little bit about this piece.
The Edmund Pettus Bridge, Selma. I think the movie was just out, Selma. I think John Legend even won an Oscar for the music for it. The artist is Frank Frazier. Frank Frazier is a very interesting artist. He was living in Dallas, and I believe he's in Houston, Texas now. He has mentored so many African-American artists. Every time I would go to the National Medical Association conventions, that's where I usually buy artwork. And Frank Frazier will always be there. And I called him a few days ago about this piece, and he was all excited. He said, let me tell you what I'm doing right now. He said, right now I am doing Tulsa and Black Wall Street. And he asked me a question that I did not know. He said, do you know how many airports were in Tulsa, Oklahoma back then? And I said, no, I don't. He said, there were two. And he said, they were both owned by African Americans. So I would guess the jealousy that comes from that, the other thing, that's right. That's right. The mainstream business owners who were there obviously became extremely jealous. And that's probably a lot of the reason why they were burnt out. But Selma is an important piece. The Edmund Pettus Bridge, if you think about that, I think that was around 1964, 1965, 1965. And after this, Bloody Sunday, and after this, when they were not allowed to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, I believe that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I believe after that, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. I think the year before he signed the Voting Rights Act and then the Civil Rights Act after that. That was really a pivotal point.
Speaking of old enough to have been old enough to remember those days, speaking of that period, the year before that, something monumental happened with a little girl going to school. So I noticed that one of the pieces you have out there is not one of the artist showcase artists, but tell us why that piece is out there.
Well, that piece is out there because it is Ruby Bridges, and she's being escorted to school by federal marshals. The artist is, of course, the infamous Norman Rockwell, who was for many years called the label of illustrator. And just more recently, I think because of photography and a lot of other art mediums, he's now considered a fine artist. And I think that piece speaks volumes of all of the things that were going on. And I guess you had done some research on the piece too, and was saying that he changed the color of her dress from a plaid dress to a white dress. And the bulbs that are in her hair were also white. And there's some very derogatory things on the back wall. There are tomatoes being thrown at her. But the strength of Ruby Bridges is so important because she's her spirit just says, I'm a little young lady who's very excited about going off to school and learning. You can see the expression in her face. She's holding her head up high, which I think is very important because so often Black children are told to hold your head down and do not look people in the eye. So I think that there was some very significant messages in that piece. There really, really, really are. And I really commend Norman Rockwell for capturing that piece.
When I looked at it, my first thought was I would love to talk to the 4 federal marshals that had to take this young girl to school that morning. I'm sure they didn't sign up for it. It wasn't their first choice though.
That's true.
Yeah, she was resolute. I'm sure they worked with her consistently. And I was telling Dr. Lowe earlier that I was, as a 9-year-old, I integrated an all-white school in New Jersey. So I know that field. But I didn't have to go with marshals. It's a little bit different. So one of the beautiful things about Dr. Willie Artist Showcase, I know that you do a wonderful job as a local artist. I know that you support us as local artists, which is wonderful. And one of our local artists, when I toured the exhibit earlier, one artist I didn't have to ask whose work it was, because Karen Bowman sort of jumped right at it, exactly who the artist was. Tell us about Karen's work.
Well, I'd love for Karen to tell us about her. So Karen is just a wonderful artist. I think the city of Riviera Beach knows her very, very well. I think she did the water tower here in Riviera Beach. She's art in public places. She does fabulous work. It's a lot of it's abstract. She has fun faces in it. We did a show at the Jupiter Theater, and she did some. It was with the Wiz, and she did some wonderful pieces on the Wizard of Oz. But she has everything in her pieces. You see, I would say you see collage in her pieces. You see African mask in her pieces. And I always like to talk about the African mask and Picasso and what inspired Picasso to create the whole movement of Cubism. And he said it was the African mask that caused him to do that. It's very, very interesting. But Karen is just wonderful, and she does wonderful work. And we are hoping that she's been awarded so many things. She's so sweet and kind, but she just has wonderful work. I think you see everything in it, all of the elements. You see abstract, you can also still see faces, you see colors, you see a little cubism in it, and you see several medium pieces in her artwork. So it's just wonderful.
And some of you out there should know that one of these days I'm going to own a Karen phone and keep purse, because she does this fabulous
Shoes
work.
and purses, yes, she does.
What really struck me as I went to the exhibit today is the history. We went from Piggy Cotton to there are two pictures of a very proud young boy and a very proud older man. And they're each reading a document that says America has just elected its first African American president. So talk about first the little boy and then the older man.
Okay, the first little boy is an art piece by Peter Marshall. Originally from Jamaica, lives here right here in West Palm Beach. Has done some really, really wonderful work. And I think he really, really captured a lot in this piece with this young boy, who's now is extremely proud to be able to identify and say, here's somebody who looks like me, who's the most powerful man in the world, and who's running the country, America. So I think it's a very, very powerful piece. It's a piece that all children, but especially African-American children, and especially African-American males, should be able to have this as a poster on their wall, to be very, very proud to see that if they work hard, they study hard, they too can aspire and become what they dreamt about doing. This is realizing the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King. And as we were talking about earlier, even with Ruby Bridges, I think I saw a clip on PBS or something where President Obama was there, and I believe he was giving her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And he said to her, Ruby Bridges, had it not been for Rosa Parks, had it not been for you, had it not been for Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, I probably would not have become president of the United States. So there are building blocks and there are bridges, and there are backs for which we all stand upon.
And tell us about the gentleman, the older man.
The older gentleman, that's Ruby Bridges there, that's Norman Rockwell. The older gentleman is a gentleman, and I would say he's a universal person. He's reading the newspaper, and I think the newspaper says, America elects the first Black president. And this is again by Joel Gresham, who did the Edmund Moses piece. And Joel is a wonderful artist. He loves to work with watercolors and pastels. But I think he really captured a lot of years. You said, Barbara, here it looks like he's sitting out in the grass field or in our park.
I'm native New York. I need 12 buildings in New York City.
But I was just saying, I said, Barbara, what do you think his ethnicity is? Do you think he's African American? Do you think he's white? Do you think he's Native American or Hispanic, or what is he? He's a universal person, isn't he? Yeah.
And it's funny because when she said that to me, my art collection, and I have quite an art collection, I certainly find a place to hang them all. I would have looked at it because he was a black man. But when you said that, I looked at it and I realized he could be anybody. So that's a piece that anybody would buy and put in their homes, because it doesn't have an ethnicity.
That's right. That's why people are going toward abstract.
Yeah.
There are a lot of well-to-do multi.
But you can see some pride in this man reading this paper. I'm reading The Promised Land right now, which is Barack Obama's book. Actually, I'm listening to it. It's 27 hours of listening. But it was that or 700 plus pages of reading, so I'm listening. And it's his voice, so I don't mind. But at one point he talks about the butlers in the residence of the White House, and how very proud they were. They said, President Obama, you don't know what having you here means. These older black gentlemen who worked for 5 and 6 presidents, and you don't know what that means. So he was struck by that pride. I see that in this man's face. There's another piece out there where we're talking about elections, and that's the piece about holding up the arm, the black arm.
Yes. The Arthur Dawson piece.
Yes.
With the flag, with the US flag. And all the different, the multicultural, the arms of all the men who probably served in every war, every conflict that we have had. And when they have to be in the trenches like that, fighting together, being brothers and all, and having to keep up with each other's back, because it's their life depended on it. And then to come back, and I think Colin Powell even talked about that just a little, and then coming back home, and then saying, oh, we have to be separate but equal, and oh, you don't have the rights that I have. You know, what does that do to people, and how does that make someone feel? And a lot of times people become very, very introspective. And so often it winds up being, again, it comes back to our art. It is our art is healing. It helps people work through so much of their pain and suffering. But this is a great piece, and I think Arthur Dawson has done 2 versions of this. One of them is at the original is at the Michigan Bar Association of the state of Michigan. That's where the original of that piece is. But it's a wonderful piece, it really is.
So I want to ask you a question about art, because I have this discussion with my artist colleagues all the time. Everybody can find a way to budget for everything they want. Hair, nails, shoes, entertainment. Art seems to be a problem. So when I look at these pieces, I have pieces out there that I can walk away with today, and pieces that I can never walk away with because I can't afford them. But talk about how art can be affordable for everyone and why it should be.
Art should be affordable for everyone, because I would say that art is what distinguishes us from all the other creatures on the earth. I mean, very few other, there are a couple of little squirrels and things to hide things away, but it's basically a human quality for us to collect and hold things of value that we cherish, relics and things like that. So art gets to be very, very important. And I think it's a learned experience in the sense that parents have to teach children how important art is for them. It's just like music, theater, all of the arts. When I went to college in Gainesville, boy, that was an experience. But I think that's what got me collecting art, believe it or not. And I hadn't thought about this for a while. Was my college professor, who I will never forget, Professor Hart, at the University of Florida. When I took my humanities, they made us go to see the Florida players, so we had to be involved with the theater and see that. And then we got to Picasso. And when we got to Picasso, and I wrote a paper and I said, this is wonderful. Every group of people contributes something positive to mankind. And I felt so elated that Picasso said the greatest artist of the 20th century, it said it was the African mass that inspired him to start the movement of Cubism. And I wrote that in my paper, and my professor said, Kathleen, I'm sorry, you see it wrong. That is not how it is. And he only gave me a B on that paper. And I said, well, you know, I guess I've got to go do some research. And I think that's what started me on my journey of collecting art. So it is so important.
And speaking to that as well, everybody doesn't have to have an original.
No, you don't.
So speak to that, how people can collect art and doesn't have to, because she just convinced me to come home and buy a piece online and tell her how that came about. Tell them how that came about.
Okay, it's really the Norman Rockwell piece of Ruby Bridges. And I just wanted to know, I've been to Norman Rockwell's gallery in the western part of Massachusetts. And somewhere in a poster in one of my storage closets, I have the piece, but I needed it, so I ordered it from Amazon online, already framed. Came to me in 4 days. So,
I'm ordering mine this evening when I get home.
but it's important to support Black artists. And I think when you learn your genre of what you like, you know, if you like bright colors or if you like, you know, black and white or whatever it is that you like, I think it's just good to start collecting a few things. Let it be memorable, let it be fun, and enjoy it, and learn something from it, and share it with others.
And I think there is, I'm gonna do a shameless plug, because I believe there's a wonderful Black art show happening in Lake Worth right now. I can't remember the name of it, but someone's gonna tell me.
Caribou.
Thank you. Caribou. It's a show right now at the Cultural Council in Lake Worth. So it's definitely worth seeing. I'm not in it, but I know a lot of friends are. So I would love to have not in it because I think she's gonna say, because you didn't get you something. But I think it's worth seeing, and we have to know. So we're gonna ask now, I have one more question for you after I've shamelessly plugged another show. I want you to see this one and that one. If somebody sees something here that they fall in love with, how do they take it home?
Very easily, they can write a check, charge card, however you'd like to do it, even take payment plans, but Artist Showcase the Palm Beaches, there's, Omari just been back there from Artist Showcase the Palm Beaches, he will be, I don't know if we brought our Square card today or not, but we will certainly be able to take your order and make sure that you get your piece to go on your wall at home or give it as a gift or put it in your office.
I love it. So you have to leave it here for the rest of the month though. You can't disturb it.
Yes.
But it will be yours.
That's right. Someone asked about, I think, the Florida Highwayman. Does someone have a question about the Florida Highwayman? We've had the Florida, you know, there's several schools of art, and I know that a lot of people know about the Hudson School of Art with the large panoramic views out of New York, upstate New York and all. And I've always said for years that the Florida Highwaymen out of Fort Pierce, they created a whole new movement of art here in Florida with their cotton candy clouds and all of the things, and all of the tourists would come down to South Florida and want to take a piece of that artwork back home. So we've done lots of shows with several of the artists from the Highwaymen.
And I will tell you, if you're interested in the Highwaymen and have never seen their work, it's hanging right now in the City Hall of Palm Beach Gardens. Yeah, that's what they have hanging regularly, yes. Well, Dr. Will, this has been a joy, as always. Last line, I think the last line you want them to hear about art in Palm Beach County.
Artists come be a part. We say that Artist Showcase is fun and let everyone come and be a part of greatness and enjoy.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
With